Please welcome 5Link's President and CEO, Craig Jerabeck.
Sun beat down, I had the radio on, I was driving, trees went by, me and Del were singing, Little Runaway, I was flying.
Good morning, 5Links. Didn't Jason do a good job? It's great to see all of you here in Orlando. We've got a huge group with us today, and we're always so happy to get everybody together to kick off another quarter of success. You know, I get up here, and I have a pretty well-scripted speech. But today I'd like to do something a little different with you guys. I'm going to take a risk today. I want to share a very personal story about my life and my career. Back in July, Platinum Senior Vice Presidents Frank and Nicole Kimbrough invited me to the regional in Chicago. When I arrived at the event, I had a talk ready to go like I usually do. But I sat in the back chatting with a few representatives, and I kept hearing a familiar refrain. Mr. Jerabeck, this business is hard. There are a lot of setbacks in this business. I didn't think it would take this much effort. You know, my reply was that there's setbacks and obstacles in any business or any pursuit in which you want to excel. I've yet to find a business that's easy. How many of our senior vice presidents and platinum senior vice presidents have lost reps or teams or entire legs of their business? It happens all the time. I know some of them, a number of them, have started over multiple times on their journey in 5Links. Ask any SVP or platinum, and they can tell you a story of the struggles it takes to get to the top of this business. The road to success isn't a smoothly paved, perfectly straight, downhill road. It's a long uphill climb with lots of bumps and lots of curves along the way. While I was talking to the representatives in Chicago, I realized I'd never shared my personal story with the 5Links team. I never shared it mainly because I didn't like a lot of it. I didn't want to admit that I had failures and setbacks in my career. But after these folks shared their pain with me, I had to share my personal journey with them. I'd like to share that with you today. I'm going to start back a little ways, not when I was born, but a little ways, just to help you understand who I am. I grew up with my mom, my sister, my stepdad. I had an older brother, but my parents divorced when we were kids. He pretty much took off. My dad was a hardworking blue-collar guy. He did heating and air conditioning repair and installations, that sort of thing. He came home with dirty hands every day. And I used to help him. I'd cut sheet metal or thread pipe or insulate attics and generally doing every dirty job he could think of. Because, in Dad's words, he didn't want me to grow up doing what he did. He wanted me to go to college and get a good job, so he showed me the ugly side of his job. My mom stayed home, though, and took care of us. She did the bookkeeping for the business. I remember money was always a big issue in our household. My dad never earned more than $35,000 in a single year in his life. And there were always fights in the house about money. I went to school at the University of Buffalo after high school, as did my partner, Jeb. I went to state school because that's all I could afford. My parents didn't have the money to pay for college. And honestly, my grades in high school were pretty bad. And UB was the only school that accepted me. That's the truth. I wanted to go to Cornell, but they weren't having me. See, during high school, I went to work. I worked on making money, not grades. So I went to college, I buckled down, I paid for college with grants and student loans and the money I made at all the different jobs I did. And I did every job you could imagine. You know, I cut lawns, I did telemarketing, I washed dishes. I even worked for a multi-level marketing company selling tableware. That was a tough one. Probably the toughest of all. After I got my MBA in 1984, I went to work for AT&T as a sales rep. It was a dream job. I got out of school. I was making $34,000 a year plus commissions. I worked my tail off. And my first full year, 1985, I remember I made $68,000. It was a lot of dough for a 24-year-old back in 1985. And the next year, Mary and I got married. In 1989, still with AT&T, I was the youngest district manager in the company, 29 years old. I thought we were really living. Life was good. We were in our third home. We had nice cars. Actually, we had one nice car and a minivan. But we had plenty of spending money, and life was pretty good. What I learned at AT&T is that the harder I worked, the more quota they gave me. And every year, getting past that $68,000 got harder and harder because the companies like AT&T, they manage your pay very carefully. No one's allowed to make more money than their boss at AT&T. In 1992, after 3 moves, I had a wife, a baby. It was time to move again. So I go to New Jersey for an interview. I walk in this interview thinking I'm the deal. I mean, they're going to love Craig Jerabeck, right? So I walk in, and in 30 seconds, I knew I was done. This guy, I was this hotshot sales guy, I thought. How could he not love me? I had the best numbers in the region, but he didn't want me. He wanted a company guy. What he really wanted was a yes man. And for anybody who knows me, you probably know I'm anything but a yes man. So I called my boss after the interview. I said, how'd it go? He said, not well. The words loose cannon were used to describe you. I've heard that a couple times since. I knew that was the end of my career at AT&T, though, right then. And I wish I could remember that guy so I could go back and thank him for waking me up out of the stupor that I was in at AT&T. Literally 2 weeks to the day after I got home from that interview, I had a new job as a general manager for Cellular One in Rochester, New York. It was a great job. Lots more responsibility, lots more money in an industry that was growing like crazy. The people I worked for were amazing. They gave you enough rope to hang yourself or to prove that you had what it takes to get ahead. 2 years later, they sold that company to Southwest Bell Communications, what we knew as Singular back then. SBC later went on to buy AT&T. I had already worked for one big phone company. I didn't want to repeat that experience. So I went to my new boss, Ray, and I said, Ray, I don't want to stay. I want to become an agent for this new company. Cell One was big on sales agents at the time, wireless stores. They were the beginning of that. But I had a big stay bonus coming to me if I stuck around. If I stayed for 6 months, I'd get $50,000. And I didn't want to lose that $50,000, but I knew I couldn't stay there. So Ray surprised me. He said, this is great. We're going to fire you anyway. You just saved us the trouble. This is a true story. Their plan was to fire every senior manager in that company and hire us all back at 20% less pay. That was the way they were going to pay for their new acquisition. But he did me a favor. He let me resign early, let me keep my stay bonus, and I used that money to open my first store with Cellular One. And that was September 9th of 1994. Now, so far, this doesn't sound like a sad story, right? It's not. It's been a good story so far. But here's where it gets a little more interesting. I start this business, which we called Cellular Unlimited. I had a partner named Todd. Our business plan called for us each to put $87,500 into the bank. So I immediately took out a home equity loan. I put my $87,500 in the bank account, and my partner didn't. Now, I should have known that, right? That was the first sign of trouble, and that was a week in to the job. We started working. We worked early mornings. We worked late nights. We built 3 stores. We literally built them ourselves. We'd build them at night in the shopping malls. We'd start at 9:30 at night when the mall closed. We'd open up at 9:30 in the morning, and we'd work all day after we built these stores. And it was, exciting, exhilarating times. But after we bought the materials for the stores, the supplies, the inventory, paid the payroll, money got tight. So I asked Todd again to put his money in. He put in $11,000, not the $87,500. I said, where's the rest of the money? Just give me a couple more weeks. A couple more weeks, I'll have the money. I'm waiting to get it out of my 401k. It's not so easy. So now we roll into December. We had our 3 stores. We had 9 or 10 employees. By the way, I have to stop for a second. One of the original employees is sitting over here to my left. I'm going to make her stand up because Robin Hoffman has been with me for so many years. And I love Robin. She's been a constant in my career for so long. Thank you, Robin. So we have these 3 stores, empty shelves, and no cash. And it was a warm December, that first December. There was nobody buying phones because it wasn't snowing. And back then, for those of you old enough to remember buying cell phones back in the early 90s, when it snowed, people bought phones like crazy. When it didn't, they didn't. But when it snows in western New York, people get stuck on the highway. And then they come and buy our phones. So in mid-December, my partner comes to me and he says, I'm not putting my money in. He said, your plans are too big. You want to do too much. I just want one store and a simple life. So I interpreted this one of 2 ways. Either Todd didn't have the money, or he just wanted out because we had no sales. And I think it was the latter. So here I was, no partner, half the money I thought I needed. I was scared to death. I had 3 5-year leases. I personally guaranteed them all. 9 employees, no money, a pregnant wife, and a 2-year-old at home. Things weren't looking too good in mid-December. So I did what I said I'd never do. I called Mom. What do you do when you're in trouble, right? You call Mom. So I called Mom. I said, listen, Mom, I need money. She said, how much? I said, how much have you got? My mom's not a rich lady. She said, I just put $30,000 into a CD, but there's going to be a penalty to take the money out because I just put it in last week. And this was Friday afternoon. I said, I'll be there Monday morning. Don't worry about the penalty. I'll be there when the bank opens. I swore I'd never borrow money from Mom because my brother did that, and his business went bankrupt. And you know what happens in families when you don't pay back your money, right? Well, not pretty at home. Family's family until you don't pay your money back. So my next call was to Ray, the guy that sponsored me from Cell One. I said, Ray, I have no more money. I need phones. He said, well, you don't have any more credit here. Okay. So I get on the phone. I start dialing people up. I call this guy, Dave Peterson, someone I barely knew from Cellstar down in Dallas. I said, Dave, you don't know me very well, but here's my situation. He said, I don't know you very well, but I'm going to come up there and take a chance. So he flew up to see me the next week. I told him my predicament. We shook hands, and before the end of the week, I had $30,000 worth of inventory on a handshake. The next week, it snowed like crazy. Stores were filled with customers. I sold that inventory just after Christmas. It was perfect, right? Everything was coming together. On paper, I made $34,000 that year. And that was after less than 4 months in the business. But I was buried in debt. So I couldn't see the top. On January 2nd, my deal with my partner said I'm going to pay him back his money. I paid him his $11,000, borrowed that money. Did my tax returns in March. Found out that since I made $34,000, I owed $17,000 in taxes. Wasn't expecting that one. So I had to borrow the money to pay the taxes. Then my ex-partner comes along and says, by the way, you owe me half of that $34,000. I need $17,000 from you, or I'm going to sue you. And so I go talk to a lawyer, and the lawyer tells me, oh, he's right. Even though he didn't put his money in on paper, he owns 50% of the business, so you have to pay him. So very naive, right? I thought when we had that deal, I gave him back his money. We were done. We shook hands. It's all over, right? You didn't put your money in. You got your money back. We're out. So at this point, I have over $120,000 into the business. I hadn't taken a single dime in pay. I'm living off what we had in the savings and on the home equity loan. And I just gave away every dollar I thought I made plus more. And I had walked away from a job making $125,000 a year with benefits, a car, and a pretty easy life, frankly, working for somebody else. So here it's 7 months later. I'm 30 pounds lighter. Robin might remember that. I look like a refugee. I was a mess. I was working 6 days a week from 7 in the morning to 11 at night. I started each day in the main store. I do the inventory. I take care of all the business for the day. I'd work there till 6, and then I go to one of the mall stores. So we didn't have enough staff to staff the stores. I'd work there till 9:30. Then I'd go home and pretend I was an accountant. I'd do my paperwork on QuickBooks and made a mess of that. So at this point, I hate my ex-partner. I hate the business. I had no money coming in. I had 2 mortgages, my main mortgage, my home equity line, and headaches, just headaches. In May of that year, our son was born. So now fast forward 3 years. I have 23 locations. It's July of 1997. I bought businesses from Buffalo to Boston. We're doing $14 million a year in sales. My salary was $74,000 of getting back. But $14 million in revenue, I'm making 74 grand. I was making 125 plus at the other place, right? So, but the fact is, at least I was making money. And I always used to network, right? Just like we do in our business. I call people all over the country, seeing what's up, call other wireless dealers, say, how's business? And one day I strike up a conversation with this guy from Miami. And he said, hey, listen, this sounds like we have some common interests. I'd like to come up and visit. 2 weeks later, this sharp investment banker shows up at my office, and we made a deal to sell the business. They were doing what's called a roll-up, right? They're going to take a bunch of companies like ours, roll them together, all high-performing wireless stores, and do an IPO. This was late 1997. The IPO market was hot. It was on fire. The dot-com boom was in full swing. By the way, this is the year Jeb and I met, in 1997. So I agreed to sell the business for $2.6 million. I was finally going to get paid, right? Get rid of all these debts. The deal was I get $2 million up front on the IPO and $600,000 in an earnout, which means if I kept my numbers up, they'd pay me $600 grand over the course of the next 12 months. So I agreed to stay on for 12 months and to ensure my $600 grand. What I didn't realize is that they had no intention of paying me that money. They had no intention of paying any of us that they bought. So I got my $2 million, but I'd never see a penny of the $600K. The IPO was a sham. It was led by a group of bankers, actually companies that are still around. HIG Capital was the primary out of Miami, Florida, and Merrill Lynch was the big name that took the company public. These weren't some shady fly-by-night outfits. These were big-time financial firms. So I'm running a business. After months, I have no inventory, no advertising, no support. I'm calling these guys like crazy, dozens of times. I finally get a call back from the banker that came to visit me in July. And he says to me, and this is a quote, he said, Craig, you just don't get it. We got paid. That's what this was all about. So the bankers got paid. They got their IPO fees. They made their money. And what I didn't realize is that company was controlled by the bankers, not the original owners. And the fate of the company didn't matter once they got their pay. After 6 months, after an IPO, you're allowed to sell your shares. 6 months and 1 day, those guys sold all their shares. The stock went through the floor at that point because the lead guys sold out, right? So what happens? Everybody loses faith in the company, it falls apart. One of the original owners ended up in California as the CEO of a failed dot-com company. The other guy actually faced charges by the SEC for securities fraud, and he just disappeared. But the bankers got paid, and the owners got taken. It was an interesting lesson to learn. So I took my $2 million, paid off my debts, paid my taxes, put a bunch of money in the bank, and I started another business with about $1 million from the first venture. I called this one At Wireless. Now I was a franchisor selling a new high-tech wireless store concept. I had a great web back end, but I started from zero again. This story is a little simpler than the last one. I went from 0 to 38 million in sales between January of 99 and September of 2004. Took off like a rocket. A lot of work, but it did well. Thank you. It wasn't easy starting over, but it was a lot easier having money in the bank to live on. In July of 2004, I was offered $8 million for At Wireless, but I said, that's not enough. I turned it down. I thought it was worth 12. A smart man came up to me one day at the golf course, and he said, don't be greedy. That's all he said, don't be greedy. I didn't understand what he meant at the time. I was making $100,000 a month. Finally, things are happening. On September 16th, so fast forward 3 months, at 3:45 in the afternoon, I received a fax from Verizon Wireless. The letter said, I breached my contract through my relationship with 5 Links, and they were shutting me down at 5 o'clock that afternoon, an hour and 15 minutes later. They also said that they weren't going to pay me the $2.6 million in commissions they owed me. And they weren't going to pay me the $155,000 a month residual stream that they owed me. So just to give you guys a little perspective, I've been in a place where someone can take everything away from you, which is why when Jason says, or Jeb says, and I say representatives first, you can count on it. Thank you. Thank you, everybody. So I now had a new worst day of my life. Verizon sued me. They sued 12 other companies, all with the same lawsuit, all with the same attorneys. I sued back. I won a battle in New York State Supreme Court. Verizon was ordered to pay me, but of course they didn't. Right? Companies that big don't have to pay. Right? They can fight you forever. My lawyer said, listen, you can fight this fight. It'll probably take 3 years. It'll cost you $300,000, and you'll probably win. What you win is exactly what you lost. But you'll be done. By that time, you'll be so angry and bitter, and your business will be gone so long. He said, it won't be worth it. He said, lick your wounds, move on. But I stayed at it until January 4th of 2005. I was out of money, losing my mind. I sent everyone home and closed the doors. I was $1 million in debt. I had a dozen long-term leases and lots of bills to pay. And I went to that office building every day. I got on eBay, and I sold everything into place. I had to pay the leases, I had to pay the bills, I had to pay the vendors. So I sat in this 20,000 square foot building every day from January 4th until March, selling all this stuff to pay everyone. I couldn't file bankruptcy, it just wasn't in me to do it. But I owed $800,000 to the bank, which I had to pay back, because if I didn't, I was going to lose my home, I was going to lose everything else, because even in our business, we personally guarantee everything. I mean, we take a lease, the three of us are on the line, right? We take a bank note, the three of us are on the line. That's what happens in business. I made the last payment on that bank note in October of 2010. That's how long it took me to do that. That was a good day. Now, we started 5 Links in 2001. Jeb, Jason, and a few others started out in my wireless office building. They shared space, they shared staff, they shared the warehouse, and we did the shipping and fulfillment when we were selling cell phones and things like that. But essentially, we incubated the business inside the wireless offices. I was there kind of as the figurehead, the senior guy. I'd provide advice and counsel to these crazy, aggressive network marketing guys. But what a learning experience for all of us, right? But let me tell you, 5 Link Startup was no picnic either. Jeb, Jason, and I started out for no pay at all. Now, it wasn't so bad for me, right? I had some other income. But these guys, they worked 2 years, no pay. I don't mean a little pay, I mean no pay. Then we moved up the 3rd year, $24,000 a year we paid ourselves. That's a pretty high hill to fall off of, right? Things were tough. We almost went out of business at least a dozen times. We keep talking about the book we're going to write. But these partners of mine, they weren't going to have going out of business. They had no place else to go, and this was going to work come hell or high water. As Jeb's fond of saying, they burned the boats. There was no going back to what they had before. So for a number of years, we were grinding, right? 2005, I finally shut down that wireless. The guy said to me, why don't you come in full time? But all I wanted to do was leave town. I was ashamed. I felt defeated. I just wanted to get the heck out of Rochester. Verizon had trashed my name. It was a bad time. But as they always do, they convinced me to do something I didn't want to do. So I stayed on, became the CEO, and we dug in. In 2005, we did $5 million in sales, and then we did $12 million in sales. Then we did $25 million in sales, and on it went. Now we have the audacity to talk about doing $1 billion in sales, and we're going to get there. You see, we've been through some bad stuff, the worst stuff you could imagine, the worst stuff people could throw at us. And the fact is, I have no fear anymore. After what I've been through, I had no more fear. I'd lost money, but it's only money. You can make more. I lost my business, and my pride was badly bruised. But you can't start again. You have to know this. No one can keep you down unless you allow it. Robert Kiyosaki has a great quote. Losers quit when they fail. Winners fail until they succeed. It's the truest thing I've ever read. Successful people have something in common. They have a ferocious drive and hunger for success that doesn't allow them to give up. How many times we've heard the Michael Jordan story, right? He was benched in high school, right? He went on to become the most successful, I'd say the best basketball player and one of the wealthiest basketball players in history. Oprah Winfrey. How many of you know Oprah was told early in her career, you're not fit for TV? She didn't believe it, obviously. Oprah's now one of the most powerful women in the business world. Forget just the entertainment industry. She's created an empire worth billions and touched so many lives. So when things get tough in your business, don't quit. Don't let the naysayers knock you out. Don't let a job or business failure define you. Most of us don't have the natural talent of Michael Jordan or Oprah, but we can certainly emulate their work ethic. In 5 Links, what we need is desire, hard work, and a will to succeed. Everyone in this room can be a Michael Jordan in 5 Links. If you believe it, and you're willing to do the work, but you have to believe it, that's what separates the winners and losers in this business. But the fact that you're all here with us tells me that you guys are the winners. You're the ones willing to make a sacrifice to change your life. The road to success isn't easy, but the journey is worth it. So I urge you to make 5 Links the vehicle that changes your life. It certainly changed mine. Thank you all. God bless you and our company.
Yeah, running